Hello and welcome to the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm Sergej. I'm going to have Sergej.
Hello.
So, you know this giant rock that is floating near our planet, or I guess in our planet's orbit to be precise?
Think so, yeah.
So, supposedly humans have been there before, and it does seem kind of hard to believe if you... I mean, you know, it seems kind of crazy if you think about it, right? Like, humans walking on the moon, that sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, people don't believe it. Well, I mean, some percentage of people don't believe it. I think I've seen rates as high as, what was it, like 21% of Americans, something, lower percentage of Britain,
that is a lot.
And, was it, between 6 and 20% of Americans, which, that is a very broad range. 25% actually, and 28% of Russians. Now...
Seems accurate.
Various locations show... It doesn't say when they polled it. And the next sentence says, even as late as 2001, the Fox television network documentary Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon, claimed NASA faked the first moon landing in 1969 to win the space race. Which, first of all, typical Fox move. But second of all, so are they saying the polling is from earlier? Because the sentence before that says the conspiracy theory has sustained public interest for more than 40 years. Which would be 2009 is exactly 40 years, right? And 2001 was before that. So, I'm not entirely sure on what the timeline on this is, but that is what Wikipedia says.
It is confusing.
About people's belief in the moon landing. Also, I'm not sure what the options were, right? Is it just, do you believe it was fake, do you believe it was real? Or is it more like, do you believe it was fake, do you believe it's real, or are you uncertain, right? And then, the doubts are higher, but that's not really the point of this topic. The question isn't how many people believe it. The question is, are they right? Or more importantly, why are they wrong?
True. Should we start with the biggest argument?
I usually like finishing with the biggest argument, but we can start there because I think we both know what it is. So I think this is very up your alley to present this argument. So go ahead.
Yes. So if the US really faked the moon landing to win the space race, why wouldn't the USSR call out their bullshit? It doesn't make any sense. Because they were participating in the space race. And if they called out the US, they would have still been in the game.
So, I mean, two things about...
could have won.
Two things about what you just said, right? Number one, of course, yes. I'm fairly certain that if the US had faked the moon landing, the Russians, or the Soviets at the time, I guess, would have known, right? Because they had spies everywhere. And this is not a small project. Whether you fake it, which is a slightly smaller project than actually doing it, but the people that would have had to been involved in a real project would have still had to have some sort of job that makes them possibly makes them think that they actually did some work, but, so, I mean, that kind of goes into the second argument of just how many people would have had to shut up about it if it was faked. But, the fact that you assume that no Russian spies were present at the moon landing stuff, they didn't try to look at the moon with some of their satellites that they had to disprove that the Americans are there, and probably other ways that they could have determined that to be a hoax. It's they didn't try.
I mean, satellites were quite a new thing, so
I mean, I think
I wouldn't really put my trust in that.
I know there were lunar orbiters.
You have radio telescopes where you have where you can actually pinpoint exactly where in space a radio signal has been sent from, which you can actually use to get the trajectory of a rocket or spacecraft or whatever, if it is sending out signals periodically.
Okay, so
and they had tech like that back then.
And
they were monitoring it very closely because it is of very high interest to them.
Okay, so my argument was going to be lunar orbiters, presumably, like, would have possibly caught the Americans on the surface, but the Soviet lunar orbiters, usually, from what I see here, just the ones that they had at the time, were usually for shorter missions, so like 60 days, 38 days, 89 days. And they did send one up in 68 and one in 71, so 71 is up to late, 68 is a little early. It says, it lists the orbit here, and then it says unstable orbit, radio calibration test, ? So I assume that one didn't stay up very long, but it doesn't specify exactly. Luna
Probably
14. Not. Luna 14 was an unmanned space mission of the Luna program run by the Soviet Union. It was also called Lunik 14, okay. I believe similar to Luna 12, blah, blah, blah. The lunar gravitational field successfully entered lunar orbit on the 10th of April 1968. Initial orbit parameters. The primary goal was to test communication system to support their landing project, which piloted lunar landing project, so I guess it would have been similar to what the US was doing. Okay, so the mission lasted 75 days. Okay, so they wouldn't have had a orbiter specifically, but I'm sure, like, there was, like, it was a thing, right? Like, they would have known. Especially since also there was footage transmitted to Australia, and like, this isn't even like just a US thing. I mean, it's organized and run by NASA, but there's still like other organizations that work in that process, and like, there would have been a leak, and also the Russians would have been the first to say if there something was not right. Now, what I will say is the argument about the space race specifically. I mean, obviously, it is said that the US won the space race, and you said that if the Russians had pointed out that the moon landing was faked, then they would have had a chance to still win it. And to that I say, did the space race ever have a defined endpoint before it was ended? Because it seemed like it was...
I don't know.
It seemed to me it seemed less formal, so I haven't actually looked that deeply into the whole Cold War situation, so I don't know, but I always found it very interesting. That was like, so, you know, we have the space race, right? We're trying to one-up each other on the whole space stuff. And it's like, okay, you know, the Russians send the first animal into space. The Russians sent the first person into space, right? It's like, this and this, and like, the Russians did this, the Russians did that, and then like, the Americans landed a man on the moon. The space race is over and the Americans have won. It's like, did you just decide that your one big space achievement just happened to be the endpoint of the space race? Like, what is that all about?
I mean, what else is there to do? Send a man to Mars?
I mean, that would obviously be a lot more complicated because it's so much further. But
yeah,
I mean, I guess, right, there is sort of, I guess, establishing moon base, I don't know, build the ISS before, well, not ISS because it would be international,
fair.
But like, you know, have people be on the or on the moon or in space for longer periods, I don't know. But like,
I mean, there were space stations before the ISS.
Yes.
I think one of them was called Soyuz. If I'm not mistaken.
I have heard of Soyuz before. It definitely has something to do with the Russian space program. I don't know if it was one of the stations. Actually, when did all of that start? I wanted to look it up and then I forgot. So
I have no clue.
In the early 1980s, NASA planned to launch a modular space station called Freedom as a counterpart to the Soviet Salyut and Mir space stations. Or Mir space stations.
Okay, yeah.
In 1984,
Soyuz was apparently a rocket and not a space station. Never mind then.
I thought it sounded weird that you said space station, but I knew it was something to do with the Russian space program. Yeah, Soyuz is... Isn't that the rockets that they still use to take people up there? Isn't that what it is?
It could be.
So then ESA was invited to join Freedom, blah, blah, blah. The Japanese experiment module, or Kibo, was announced in 85 as part of Freedom. In early 85, the ESA countries approach the Columbus program, blah, blah, blah. September 93, Al Gore and Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin announced plans for a new space station, which eventually became the ISS. So the ISS actually is a relatively new thing, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So that is it. But then
Kinda
the
is.
Russian Mir is 86 to 2001. Salyut was the first space station. Blah blah blah. Researchers two crewed military reconnaissance space stations over a period of 15 years from 1971 to 86. Why is that not in the space race? I don't know, right?
It is weird.
I don't even take like a stance or anything in the Cold War. It's just the whole space race situation always seemed very arbitrary to me. It's like, first of all, why space, right? Like, why is that our dick measuring contest that we chose? And second of all, who decides when it's over? That's not actually what we're supposed to be talking about today, but that just...
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's still ongoing with the whole Mars thing going on right now.
Yeah, but I feel like the modern space race is more so between corporations than it is between nations.
I mean, corporations do play a part of it, but it's still nations, I think. Because, like, there is, as far as I know, only, like, one corporation doing stuff, which
Mars,
is SpaceX.
From Mars, I guess, yes. I mean, most of what we see is, like, just generally trying to launch rockets that leave the atmosphere. Depending on how you define the atmosphere. Yeah. And, you know, the whole space tourism thing, where you just have, like, short, like, space or near space flights, where you have, what's it called? So you have SpaceX, you have Virgin, and you have, what is the other one called? I was about to say the Amazon one, Jeff Bezos' company, that also had a name. But there's like...
I don't know.
I think it's 3 big companies that are kind of working on that sort of stuff. I think SpaceX is still not really interested in going like all the way to Mars.
Okay. Yeah, I'm only kind of interested in Mars. Anything else doesn't really interest me that much.
I mean, yeah.
So I'm not really informed on that. Didn't know any companies that actually did.
It's all
far
connected.
From SpaceX. Yeah, it is.
Because if you get better rockets, I mean, obviously the rockets that are using for space tourism stuff, which isn't exactly there yet, but would be very different from something you would use to send people to Mars. But fundamentally, if you, for example, work on more efficient fuel sources, or on I mean, more efficient in any way, right? Like if it's weight-based or whatever. So that, for example, could also then help a Mars mission, or just anything really where it's like, oh yeah, this, that. There are a couple ideas that I think are kind of interesting. Not maybe as much related to that even, of what we could do for a Mars mission, like actually like building a space yard, like, you know, just like they have in Star Trek, where it's like you have just a spaceport that's like hovering above the planet, and
I mean, that would be amazing.
You build most importantly fuel rockets there, so that you don't have. I mean, I guess you still have to shoot it up there, right? But it's like,
oh yeah, true.
But shooting up the components is very different from shooting up like a finished rocket. It's a lot.
Yeah, I guess
it is still easier. It's done over time, and also once you get into like mining stuff from asteroids, then you can have, in theory, you could have the entire production chain, or at least large parts of the production chain, just being completely off planet. Which has multiple.
I mean, at that point, I think a moon base would be better in that regard.
Yeah, I think that was also one.
I don't know what the minerals on the moon are like, if they are usable for constructing spacecraft.
So I don't know if they could directly mine the moon. I don't know, but I do know that there was talks about the idea of actually launching a Mars mission from the moon. That was actually an idea that was played with before. So yeah.
Also, on the topic of like sending all the parts to the construction site that is in the atmosphere or outer atmosphere or whatever, however you define it, in the orbit of Earth, like we are pretty close to like reusable rockets.
Yeah.
That are like, which is like a huge thing.
I mean,
maybe even for space tourism.
I think that's
would...
what they're being developed for. But there is also the other option of getting stuff up there, which is, of course, just a lift. Well, an elevator, I suppose, I should say.
But that would use exotic materials that we only have in theory.
I think there's also the big problem was just the sheer amount of materials you would need to actually build a tower that is that tall.
I mean, that too, yeah.
But in theory, once you have it built, which, again, we're not saying is like easily doable, but it is theoretically doable, then, of course, the transport costs become a lot cheaper. But that is technically not what we wanted to talk about today.
Not at all.
So
we've been going off topic for a long while.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, right, it's an interesting topic, right? Like, all of the space stuff is very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So, So, the moon landing, right? We talked about the sheer amount of people that you would need to keep quiet to win the space race. And, you could argue that there are patriotic reasons for why people might not lie about that sort of stuff, where it's like, oh yeah, you want the Americans to win the space race, so you don't leak it at the time, and then later on, you got your relations with the Soviet Union are improving, or I think shortly after it dissolved, especially like the connections with Russia were improving. And it's like, if you then leak it, that could set that back, and then once it gets more tense again, that could just make things worse. So there's never really a good time to really reveal this, as long as like all of the competitors are still in some shape or form around.
Oh yeah.
And there are people that would still feel very strongly about this. But still, I think, even with that consideration in mind, the sheer amount of people, you would have some that would not be as ideologically driven. And again, Russian spies. I mean, I don't know how confident I can be that in some part of the moon landing there was a Russian spy involved or a Soviet spy involved, but I feel like it's almost a guarantee that, like, at least somewhere in, like, maybe not in NASA directly, because I'm sure they had, especially at the time, some screening there to make sure that. Then again, spies are also kind of meant to get past some of that. But I mean, I'm sure at some point in the process there was like Soviet spy involvement. I mean, that was like a really.
It's almost guaranteed. Yeah,
spying was very big in the Cold War, and it's my understanding that in some capacity it still is today, but that's a whole other thing.
Another thing is, like, another angle that I want to point out is it's not only the big players in the space race that can actually, like, confirm or deny that they actually flew to the moon. Even average Joes like you and me, if we had a radio set up on our roofs, could easily do that. Like, we'd have to have at least 3 to actually pinpoint the stuff, and accurate time measurement devices, which, like, is a thing that you can get.
I wasn't sure you were going to go with this, because radios is not what I expected. I had another idea where you were going to go with this, but okay.
Oh, really?
Elaborate, please, on the radio stuff before we go to the next option.
I mean, basically, do the same thing that GPS does. Like, you just triangulate where the signal is coming from.
But you're saying they could have done it back then, or are you saying we could still... There's still something we could triangulate now?
No, back then.
Oh, okay, yeah, that does make sense.
Like, while the rocket is flying up to the moon, like, while it's orbiting the moon, or sending stuff from the moon, you could have totally just received the signals and measured the exact time you received the signal, and compared your results with, like, I don't know, like, your friend from next time over.
Yeah, no, because I was a bit confused when I said, like, you and I could do this. Because obviously we weren't around back then, and even if we were, we couldn't do it now.
I meant, like, average Joes like you and I.
Yeah, no, I get what you were saying. I was just, you threw me off there for a second. Because something that you and I could do right now, well, actually, it's a bit cloudy right now, but in theory, is just point a laser at them, right? Like, they have reflectors.
That is a bit dubious. Yeah, they don't really work. You'd have to have, like, a very, very precise laser.
I mean, yeah, you
like even your
also have to have a strong laser because light pollution is a thing. But theoretically, that is another way you could test it because I think they left 3 reflection devices up there during the Apollo 11, 14, and 15 missions. Yeah. And those are still up there. As are some of the flags. I think actually all except for the Apollo 11 one because that actually fell over or something. Well, I mean, still there, but
okay.
I guess so.
Yeah.
The flags and the equipment still being there isn't really something you could see from Earth, but there have been things sent to the moon since, right? Not people, right? Like the last people were sent in 1972, so there was 6 missions that sent people to the moon, all American, but there were some. Well, there was the Soviet Luna program. There was the Survey and Apollo programs, and there's also a Chinese program that's much more recent that also sent some stuff to the moon. I think mostly they actually had one.
Didn't know about that.
They had one soft landing on the dark side of the moon, which is I think the only. So soft landing means it didn't crash. Basically, like it properly descended, which. The hard landing missions usually were intended to be that, so it's like we just crash something in there and take some photos on the way. So it's not like when I say that a lot of other missions that did hard land, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were unsuccessful, but the soft landings means that they landed something more or less intact. And they actually the Chinese sent all so according to Wikipedia, all soft landings took place on the near side of the moon until the 3rd of January 2019, when the Chinese, I don't know if this is supposed to say change 4, because there's an apostrophe, so I'm assuming it might be Chang E4, but I'm not 100% sure. Spacecraft made its first landing on the far side of the moon. So yeah, that is a thing. Which is not as relevant to this, I guess, but the fact that there have been other programs from other countries as well that have taken photographs of the lunar surface, and I think some of those do also show equipment from the Apollo missions. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I know that there are other missions that have taken pictures in higher definition as well as some of the landing sites. I don't know right offhand if those were non-American, though. Because obviously, if there were more American missions, then you would just say they're just taking more evidence.
Yeah.
If you would believe that theory. But so that, it's like, even now we can still, well, not maybe you and I, but there are still ways to prove or disprove it. And again, you haven't heard anything either from that side. And Ian, the Chinese don't exactly strike me as people that would see, oh, turns out the Americans faked the moon landing, and then just go, I guess we're going to keep it to ourselves.
Yeah. Seems quite unlikely.
Yeah. So that kind of just adds to that. I think there was other so yeah, there was other landings as well. I think those were just the big ones. There was I love the categories here where it's like the human landings, and it's like late 20th century, early 21st century uncrewed crash landings, and it's like there's a Japanese one, there's a couple American ones, there's one by ESA, so it's a European one, an Indian one, another Japanese one, and a Chinese one, and a Luxembourgish one.
And I constantly forget that India has a space program.
Yeah, that one also was. I was like, huh. Yeah. And then in the 21st century, uncrewed soft landings and attempts lists 2 Chinese, 1 Israel, 3 Chinese, 1 Israeli, and 1 Indian landing there. I mean, I don't think all those were successful because it does list, say, at attempts, but actually does this one, that was this earlier. Why did I not just... Oh yeah, there. I would have to actually read them all individually, but suffice it to say, I'm sure they have pictures have come back from the moon from non-US entities that have also then corroborated some of that.
Yeah.
So I think we went into a lot of reasons why it was real. Do we want to go into some of the more common points of why people think it's fake and why those reasons are incorrect?
Sure, but I'd have to rely on you here, at least for the reasons.
So one thing is that they had a plate on the camera. So it's called a Rousseau plate, which is a clear glass plate with a... How's the word pronounced? It has a crosshair on it, okay?
Okay.
What is it, reticle? Is reticle or reticule, also known as a reticule, is a pattern of fine lines or markings built into an eyepiece of an optical device such as a telescopic side spotting scope, blah blah blah. There's a cross in there, okay? And on some images, it looks like the cross might be behind an object, as in it looks like an object would have been pasted onto the image above the cross. Wikipedia illustrates this very well. I mean, again, I'm pulling a lot of this from Wikipedia because it's just a very easy source to get a lot of information on, but I have also seen other sources debunk some of those points before. One that's cited here as well is the Mythbusters episode, which I have actually seen. I don't think they tackled the photo stuff specifically, but they tackled some of the other issues. And you get some of these images here. Can I? Well,
yes.
So it looks.
Oh god.
It's relatively small.
Oh, I see. Yes.
But it looks like the.
Yeah.
Can I? Well, that doesn't help. So it looks like it's just cut off here, right? And that would look a bit suspicious, I guess. But if you then look at the zoomed-in version here, you can see that it's actually still partially visible there. And you have another example, which is there it actually has multiple crosses. I don't know what's about that. And if you look the alignment of the crosses, it does look like there's none but the American flags. And then if you have this zoomed-in shot, which I can also... you can see that it isn't much there, just not as much on the white stripes. And so the explanation for that is, and apparently this mostly happens, or generally just happens in copies, not in the original photographs, as a matter of fact. But of course, a lot of the off copies are passed around as well. But it's just that the white color bleeds.
It just bleeds over.
Yeah, and with the high contrast, it becomes very hard to see the black specifically on the white background. And so white objects...
Especially because the black lines are very, very thin.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the red stripes, you can see it very clearly.
And the white stripes are very, very white.
The fact of the matter is, if you wanted to Photoshop this image, you wouldn't then re-add the cross over the red sections. You would add it completely. Well, I say Photoshop, of course, we're talking about much more primitive image editing stuff that would have been done in the 60s, but still. This just doesn't make sense, right? Because if you were to re-add it, you would just re-add it in full. There's also some images where...
I mean, this as an argument also doesn't really make sense, because, if they weren't on the moon, they wouldn't need to Photoshop anything, or, Photoshop.
Well...
edit the images. They could have shot them correctly the first time.
Well, I guess it depends...
Even retried as much as they had to.
Well, I mean, it depends on if you have, images from a probe that you sent to the moon and you want to use that image and then impose elements like the astronauts and the flags onto that real moon image, rather than shooting it on a stage where maybe you'd have some other issues that would make it look less realistic for whatever reason.
I see. Okay, yeah.
So,
I see.
There are various theories about how they would have faked it, right? Obviously, the main one is just that it's filmed either in the desert or on a stage, on a sound stage. But there are also other ideas of how evidence could have been faked that maybe don't necessarily rely on that exact explanation, though, of course. That was a live broadcast, which would have still had to have been done somehow, but... So, you do make a good point of why...
I mean, the live broadcast, I can see how they could have recorded in before the mission and just kept a recording on the spacecraft and then sent it from there. So also to fake out all the other competitors and observers to actually confirm that the signal is coming from space.
No, but what you're also saying, how if it's pre-canned, then you wouldn't need to fake the photographs separately. You could just take them from the shoot.
Oh yeah.
I guess unless, because the photos are more permanent and in higher detail or whatever, you maybe have an argument there, but still. Another one is that the cross is sometimes rotated around the wrong place. Because, guess what? They sometimes crop the photos. Which is like...
I mean, yeah.
It's like, what kind of argument is this even? So yeah, they talk about there being no stars in the photographs, which has to do with light pollution and the fact that it's actually a very bright environment, and the moon as well is very bright, so the camera would use a very high shutter speed so that it would have lower exposure times, which means that it would be less receptive to like the very faint stars. There was actually other things where
I mean, you know that if you've ever actually had a camera in your hand that is manual, and you've played around with settings, you know how hard it is to actually capture, like, even on Earth, if you're in a really dark environment, how hard it is to capture, like, stars in the sky. You're lucky if you can get a good image of the moon.
Yeah, so it actually says...
And that thing is bright.
Photos of the planet Venus were taken from the moon's surface by astronaut Alan Shepard during the Apollo 14 mission. So they were like, oh yeah, we can't photograph stars, but Venus is much brighter in the sky, so that works. So, you know, kind of like what you said, but it's like, it depends, right? And also, mind you said the photos taken from Earth, and you were talking about taking them at night. They were always on the moon during moon day.
Oh yeah.
So that's also a factor. I mean, also apparently, some of the other concerns that people had about heat are not as prevalent because it's not moon noon. That's so stupid. But they do it in like what would be the early morning of the moon day, because apparently the moon day is like 30 Earth days long, or well, I think it was 29 something. It's like a month long basically.
Almost, yeah.
So yeah, that is there's some stuff about shadows and lighting stuff which I honestly don't even want to get into, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh my god, it looks very artificially lit, and it's like, actually it has to do with light scattering properties of that. It's like, the explanation is actually unnecessarily complex. I mean, it's not unnecessarily complex as in you couldn't explain it more simply very well, but it's kind of unnecessary to debug every point right now for us.
I guess, yeah.
Two points that I did want to hit is the dust, or rather the footprints, and the flag. Those are the big ones that I've heard before as well. So footprints and dust being kicked up and all that sort of stuff. They sometimes talk about how footprints in the moon dust are unexpectedly well preserved despite the lack of moisture. And then it says moon dust is up and weathered like earth sand and has sharp edges that allows dust particles to stick together and hold their shape in a vacuum. And then the Mythbusters episode also talked about how the properties of the moon dust are just different, and the sort of counterpoint here is that the dust actually behaved very interestingly when it was kicked up, which is not mentioned a lot, and that is that it flew up very high and in a very parabolic fashion, almost as if there was low gravity and no air resistance, right?
Yeah, almost.
So a lot of the ideas of like using harnesses and slow motion to adjust how the astronauts look in how to fake the moonwalking are very reasonable, but it's very hard to fake that with like thousands of dust particles. So that is one. And then the flag waving is very interesting, actually, because why does the flag not just slump down? Do you know?
Really, no?
So, it's actually stupidly simple. They use a flagpole that doesn't just go up like this, but also has like a bend up top, so that the flag doesn't drop down, right? So
makes sense.
It's just actively supported.
Fair
now,
enough.
why does it look like it's waving, right? And
I think probably from the inertia of putting it in.
So a part of it is that it's a bit creasy from just having been folded. And then but so when you put it in, like there is a bit of wobbling, but then in later pictures it actually is still, but it is in a way where it looks kind of like it's waving. So what we're seeing here, and I'm gonna pull up pictures again, right? This looks like a waving flag.
It kind of does, yeah.
this also looks like a waving flag. These are two different pictures, right? And then we have this animation that just switches between those two frames, and you can see that even while the astronaut is moving, the flag waving is in the exact same position. So if this was filmed in a studio, I mean, I guess you could produce a rigid flag that looks like this, but like this is not the flag waving at the very least. Like that is disproven. Now, obviously, you could say if it's like the photo's manipulated, then of course the flag would look the same in every picture. I'm sure there are other perspectives there, but that's interesting. And then one other thing, there's this video that I wanted to play, which we're also going to do a bit of a reaction to. Let me actually turn these
reaction
subtitles off, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be half cut off anyways. This is a bit long, about 47 seconds, but I think this is very interesting to watch because this demonstrates something very cool.
Well, in my left hand I have a feather, in my right hand a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago, who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that?
So yeah, that was one of the astronauts from one of the later Apollo missions, Apollo 15, it says right here. Actually, I don't know, I'm still on this.
I haven't seen that video before.
David Scott.
It looks so surreal.
From the Apollo 15
with
mission.
The feather just falling like a rock.
Was demonstrating how, in a vacuum, objects all drop at a consistent rate, no matter their like weight density or like their surface properties or anything like that. So, I have seen it demonstrated before on Earth, like, you know, like a vacuum chamber, but this is very hard to do unless you have like a vacuum chamber that's large enough to contain the entire astronaut, the vehicle behind him, and like everything else you can see in the shot without having an obvious background. And so yeah, this is, by the way, the reason why I mentioned the falcon feather is because
you wouldn't necessarily have to have the vehicle in the background be in the vacuum chamber.
Yeah.
It can, I mean, green screen exists, but...
Well, it didn't back then.
Still, like... Fair, yes. Okay, never mind.
So, the lunar lander that they used on Apollo 15 was called the Falcon, that's why he said it was fittingly a falcon feather. So that's why that was chosen. I assume it is named based on the Apollo 11 mission where the lander was called the Eagle. Other names include Intrepid, Antares, Orion, and Challenger. But that is besides the point. But yeah, that's no. I thought when I found that video on the Wikipedia page, I was like, oh my god, right? Like, not only is this really cool evidence for the moon being real, but also, I mean, I knew that this is how it worked, but it's kind of different to like actually see it being used on the moon.
It looks so surreal.
I mean, I'm sure someone could come up with a way to fake this, and I mean, I'm sure today that it would be trivial to do so, but I don't know how strongly this supports the thing. I just really want to show the video. Yeah.
Also, one other thing. It is so much harder to fake a low-resolution video.
Huh.
Because you have to also fake the blurriness to match it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would have thought you just fake it regularly and then you just add an effect later on that kind of recreates some of that.
Yeah, but if you only have low resolution stuff as the base...
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Yeah, it will be very hard to edit a low-resolution video to add new things to it. I think it wouldn't be that difficult.
I mean, even with modern tools, it is like actually difficult. It's really non-trivial.
Yeah,
but
I
back
guess...
then, with manually cutting out stuff of the film, man,
Yeah.
I don't think that that's doable.
Yeah, I mean, again, the ways you would have to think about faking it would just be how could you set up something that looks like he's dropping a hammer and a feather on Earth to where it then drops at the same rate.
I mean, yeah.
I guess one step would be to actually not have the hammer made out of metal, that would be out of very light material, but then it would still be very hard because the feather, just by its very nature, falls very slowly because not only is it relatively light, but it also has like a very high surface area, and I think the fact that
you could maybe make one out of metal or something.
Then you'd have to drop it. Then it would probably both would drop faster. You'd then have to slow down the footage. That has to go along with all the talking and his other movements, so it has to look like I'm not saying it's entirely impossible to fake, but I'm saying it is very difficult.
Yeah.
And also, even if this is not like our silver bullet, I mean, we kind of started with that. Like, it is still really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is all the stuff I prepared regarding the moon landings, and I think we did kind of go into a lot of stuff there. So unless you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I don't really have more.
Which brings us to our facts.
Wait. Before we do that, you know what we really should do at some point? Play Kerbal Space Program.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe even on the channel. Though I don't know how we can actually do that.
I mean, people have done it before.
Entertainingly.
I mean, yeah, I did probably would have to involve a lot of cutting, which is the kind of content I'm always a bit more hesitant to make because I know that, especially for me personally, cutting is always the thing that ends up taking the most time. So if I do something like the podcast and it's completely uncut, like there's a reason why it's uncut, right? But obviously you could make it flow a little bit better if you cut out some of the things, especially when we actually just have silence or just ums and ahs and whatnot. It wouldn't look as good with the jump cuts, and it wouldn't sound as authentic in some ways. But realistically, it's just because I don't want to edit this, right? I mean, editing 2 hours of footage, like, even to just, like, cut it down a little bit, can definitely take some time.
Really does. It really does. Yeah. But yeah, moving on to the facts.
Yes.
So, you've probably heard of flight simulators and like
yes,
other military simulators that aren't just used in the military, but like for actual gaming purposes.
Yes, I have.
Have you by any chance heard of a specific one called DCS World?
I have not.
Okay, thought so. Yeah, anyway, that is like a rather big simulator with a very, very authentic like aircraft and like other vehicles that are also part of it. I'm not too sure on the details of it. I've only played it for like half an hour.
Okay.
I've only seen a bit of stuff. So yeah, apparently, one of the developers of that simulator was arrested for smuggling United States owned fighter jet manuals.
Yeah. I mean, when you said it was very accurate, that's something that definitely came to mind. That actually reminds me of something that I recently learned, which is, did you know that manuals for tanks sometimes get leaked on the World of Tanks forums?
Yeah, wasn't it World of Warcraft? No. Wait. Wrong game. Completely
Tanks.
Wrong game.
Or whatever it's called. Right?
What's the other one that combines all three? War Thunder.
I don't know. I think it was World of Tanks that I heard about, but yeah. So like, players will literally be like, "Hey, so the behavior in the game is unrealistic for this and that reason. Here's the passage of the manual." It's like, excuse me. And so apparently that has happened repeatedly.
Yeah.
With manuals from different tanks and like specifications for ammunitions and stuff being leaked online, because I guess military people also like to play video games, and apparently they seem to sometimes care about those video games a lot more than about their careers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is the thing. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that particular thing?
Not too sure anymore, because it's been a while since I've read this. Yes, no, okay, I found it. So apparently, the French Air Force actually uses this certain simulator to actually train their fighter pilots.
I mean, if it's so good,
I find
why
hilarious.
Not, right? I mean, hey, still from the best. So, my fact of the week is about something a little different. Say, you see a headline in the newspaper, right? And it says something like, "Was the moon landing a hoax?" Then what is the answer to that question?
Well, probably not.
So, Betteridge's law of headlines is an adage that states any headline that ends in a question mark can be answered by the word no. Obviously, that only pertains to yes or no questions. Kind of sensible. And that is kind of what my fact of the week is, but I will elaborate further. So, first of all, it's called Betteridge's Law because he was one of the people who happened to write about it, and that happened to be associated with him. He's not even the first person to write about it, it just happens to be down for him. A similar observation was made by British newspaper editor Andrew Marr, who writes, if the headline asks a question, try answering no. If is this the true facet of Britain's young sensibility? No. Have we found a cure for AIDS? No. Just examples. A headline with a question mark at the end means, in the vast majority of cases, that the story is tendentious or oversold. It is often a scare story or an attempt to elevate some run-of-the-mill piece of reporting into a national controversy and preferably a national panic. To a busy journalist hunting for real information, a question mark means don't bother reading this. So that is interesting.
Yeah, that's fair.
There have been studies made to actually try to prove this or disprove it. I mean, just to investigate this. And a 2016 study of a sample of academic journals set out to test Betteridge's Law and Hincliffe's Rule, which is basically the same thing but for academic papers. And found that few titles were posed as questions and few were yes or no questions, and they were most often answered yes in the body of the article rather than no. A 2018 study of 2,585 articles in 4 academic journals in the field of ecology similarly found that very few titles were posed as questions at all, with 1.82% being WH questions, why, what, where, who, and 2.15 being yes or no questions. Of the yes or no questions, 44% were answered yes, 34% maybe, and 22% were answered no. In 2015 study of 26,000 articles from 13 news sites on the World Wide Web, the internet, conducted by a data scientist and published on his blog, found that the majority, 54%, were yes or no questions, which divided into 20% yes, 17% no, and 16% those whose answers he could not determine. So
could you read out the actual numbers slower, please?
I mean, what it boils down to is that, at least within the articles themselves, the answer to the posted question, in fact, is most often than not yes. So it was 34% yes, 20% maybe. 44% yes, 34% maybe, and 22% no in one study, and it was 2017-16 was a split in another one, but that was off the total headlines, not off of the ones that were just yes or no questions. So usually yes will be the plurality but not the majority, as in it's the biggest share but not more than half. However, at least some of these studies, as it is worded here, were investigating specifically if the actual article answers the question yes or no, not whether the objectively true answer is yes or no. So it still seems to hold true to some degree that, and there are anecdotes in here as well that seem to support this about question headlines that I don't have time to read out in detail, but that basically says that sometimes editors will be like, hey, if you don't have your facts like 100% sure, then just put a question mark, basically. And so there is a practice of just, if you don't have a high degree of certainty, you can ask it as a question, because then you're not lying. And so even if the article concludes that it is most likely true, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is true. So there is still some truth to this idea, but it's still not nearly as clear as the edit states. Additionally, I found out that apparently the Supreme Court of Oklahoma has determined that putting a question mark at the end of a headline does not make it exempt from libel. So that's also not that surprising. So basically,
exempt from libel. From what?
Libel's like slander, but written.
Libel.
Defamation.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
If you don't know what slander, defamation, or libel are, I think I'm starting to run out of words to use.
Slander, yes. I understood slander.
Yeah, slander is basically the spoken form, libel is the written form, and I think defamation is a general term. I might have gotten some of that slightly mixed up, but so the fact of the matter is, if
I will have to look up how it's written or how it's spelled.
Libel should be Libel, I think. Might be LE in British English, I'm not 100% sure. But that is basically just saying, if I say something that would be libelous in the headline and instead worded as a question, it's still libel. Which isn't really that surprising.
I see. Yes, I actually didn't know the word libel.
Which, of course, libel is a 5-letter word, which means we're not playing Squirtle. Okay, that transition wasn't very good, but you get the idea. I guess we're playing the weekly Squirtle again.
We could actually... Yes.
And what? You don't actually want to start with libel, do you?
I mean, we totally could. Also, did we always start with 8?
Yes. The weekly ones are 8, and the daily ones are 10.
Ah, okay. I see.
I think I pointed this out when we played the first weekly one as well, but we shouldn't use libel because
I didn't remember.
It has 2 L's in it.
It has 2 L's.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna stick.
Also, not many vowels.
I think we're gonna stick with saying ciao, by which I mean adieu.
Yes.
See, it makes sense cross-linguistically. We have no Ds and no Us, which is actually a lot of very good information. Although positive information usually is more actionable. We also have the E, which is very helpful.
Yep.
Speaking of E's, we need an E in the first row and the fourth column. Huh. I mean, I'm wondering if it makes sense to try to find some of those letters right away, right? Last time we kind of did that as well, and we struggled a bit at first, but we did at the end up getting it, where, we just try E and basically, like, for like the first letter of every word except for the fourth one. That sort of an idea. So we could do that for either A or E to test it, but obviously, if we do A, then we'll always know that it's not going to be correct for the column, where if we do E, it could be correct for the column. The first one specifically. So the first column doesn't contain any A's, right? So if we try guessing A's as the first letters up here, we'll never get anything positive down here. If we guess E's for the first letters up here, then we could still theoretically get positive information here, though it would kind of be a bit less useful because of the E.
How about inset? I mean, it's not really that useful with the E's.
Well, I mean, it does have the E right there. So, my main problem is that the I in the beginning doesn't work on either spot. Because this is pointing away from it, and this is pointing away from it. So, if anything, I would try something like onset, maybe, right?
Yes. Though I think set in is two separate words.
I think so, yes. Also, of course...
You could do satin.
Yes. Let's see, satin... I mean, obviously, it does work. The question then is, how much sense does it make? Because we kind of would want, if we have an I in it, to be in third position.
Yeah.
And the E, if we have it, to presumably be either in first or fourth. So, actually, anything that ends in I's, right, like flies, would totally work.
Yes.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else obvious that would work, because obviously FL is not terrible, but it's also not exactly... They're not exactly that common letters. And we aren't testing any new vowels. But I don't know if allies is a word. I know belies is, but like allies, Eli's, or like anything else, like amise. I don't know, that's not a word.
Could try bring.
Bring. It does check specifically the I. I mean, it does check a lot of letters that we haven't used thus far. It's not very strong in the vowel department, so I personally still, I think, like fly is better, because it does test for, like, this E here as well. Now, obviously, this E is probably going to be wrong. Also, like, S as a letter. So the main thing
let's go with that
I don't love about this is the F.
I mean,
but I don't
it totally works.
Really change it that well.
I mean, F is still a common letter, and it is in this puzzle.
As is S. Okay. I mean, we have a lot of eyes pointing at the central square here.
Probably somewhere in there.
I mean, obviously, if we could... Well, I mean, allied is a word, but it has double L's, right? But here's something like this. I mean, I guess the A is not... One of the A's is pointing here. Both of the... all of the I's are pointing there. The one L is pointing there. The E's are pointing there.
So we have a D in there, which is not good.
Oh, right, these are completely outlawed, right. A line. It gets worse.
Alien.
That does say alien. You're right about that. See, when you get too focused on how something is... when you get too focused on, like, one bit of pronunciation, and you build a word around that, you can sometimes spell a word that you know, but pronounce it completely butchered to a point where, like, that's not a word. I've had that a lot with Wordline Squirtle, where it's like, if I'm focusing too much on the pattern, because English pronunciation is so inconsistent, it's like, because it was flies.
It's
right?
so horrible. It's great.
Flied? Flies, it would have been flied if that was a word, but it's not. But I guess it could have been in some other cases, like belied, I mentioned earlier. Right, that would have been. And then, so, why wouldn't it be lying?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the syllable structure is different. So I do like alien, actually, quite a bit. The only thing that bugs me about this is that, obviously, it's not going to be the correct word for either one of them, right? Because for the column, this L can't be here. For the row, this A can't be here. But all the letters in this hit either something for the row or column.
Doesn't really matter. Yes. Or are new letters?
Yes. I mean, yeah. Yeah, no, I think I like this.
Yeah, let's go with that. It's great.
Well, that I was very unfortunate because
yes.
I mean, we almost kind of want to try these two now, right?
Hmm?
Like, because the I can only really go in two spots at this point, right? And one of that is in the word that we're trying to go for. Also, there's a lot of E's, man.
Also, no N's at all.
True.
That's a bit tough.
So,
a light? Is that a thing?
Like that?
I guess.
Because if you spell GHT, it's obviously way longer. Well, it's one letter long.
GT wouldn't work. Yeah.
So light would work, but a light wouldn't. So okay, A I like. The L I do like as well. The I obviously we wanted. Very specifically. The E I don't mind at the very least.
Alive. How about that?
Yes. You know, I think this is good. Wow!
Okay.
The elite! The elite! Man. I'm pretty sure it's elite.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it could be something else, I guess. So I guess we should have tried if elite is a word, because then we would have got the elite. Oh god, we also only have 4 more guesses left. Which means 1,
that
2,
is
3,
a bit
4,
tough, yeah.
Which means that we're not even going to be able to use the fact that we have elite. Unless we get something else before then. I feel like the last time we had a similar situation though, where it looked like we were almost out of guesses, and then all of a sudden we got like everything. So.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, it has been like that every time so far, I think.
I think the first letter has
if I'm not mistaken.
Very decent shot of being an A, but honestly, words ending in A, as in for the first row, don't seem that common. So I'm tending towards it being the other spot where the A could go.
Yeah.
While not necessarily want to exclude either. Let's see, all of the E's that we have, some of them do point into the first and second row, but nothing all that particular.
I mean, there's obviously no I's in the first row and column.
Yes, and nothing in the
there might
second
be
either. Because there's this and this hint.
Oh yeah, true. Yep.
I'm tending to think we've got all the I's. I can't guarantee it, but I'm thinking I isn't that common.
It is very likely.
There aren't that many places where you can put it, and having a word and a double I seems kind of weird. Having an EI seems a bit more plausible, but honestly not that likely. And that's basically all of the options we have for putting I's. I guess we could put IIE at the end, which is also stupid. So I can't guarantee it by any stretch, but I feel relatively confident in guessing there's no more I's.
What I find kind of interesting is that we apparently do have S's somewhere in here.
Yes. And we know very little about where they could be. I mean, we basically have 2 rows and columns that it couldn't be, but that still leaves 3 rows and columns minus the intersections with the other ones. So what, it blocks off like 5.
We have 6
10,
spots where an S
18.
could be.
We have 18 spots where an S can't be, plus the 6 spots that are taken. So that is 24 spots out of a 25. Wait, what did I say? Oh no, there's overlap. Right, there's overlap. I was gonna say like that doesn't sound right. There's overlap of 2 only, I think. Though. Wait, how many spots do we
have? 6 spots.
That's not that many.
Yes.
Are you counting?
Also, similar thing for Fs. Yes.
Because I mean, I can't completely exclude it, but Elise is a name, not a word.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's not there.
So that's even 1 less.
Which leaves us 5.
It's 5. Yeah.
So that is very limited.
I mean, the Fs are a similar story. We only have 5 spots where it could be.
Yeah.
While one of them, alive, is probably not a thing, so it's 4.
It's e-life, you see. It's like a life, but online. E-life. Electronic life. Coming to an area near you soon. Which, actually, that doesn't even make sense.
Yes,
because if
the metaverse.
Then it's not local.
So yeah, 4 spots for an F.
I'm gonna put, I think I put it like this last time, the T there, which is has no technical argument for being there except that I like the word elite as a very sensible answer. 5 F spots, yeah. I mean, some of which are in the possible answers here. As a matter of fact, 3 of them are, right? Like these are on our list of possible F spots, right? I mean, if we do try an F, I would prefer it in the middle of the word. Terminating an F seems
fair, yes.
I think it's possible. I'm not going to say EF is not a possible ending. I'm going to say that might very well be, but I am saying it's definitely doesn't seem very common. And it can't end in fed or fez. Well, we'll be like fizz, probably, but, like in, I don't know, oafs. That actually doesn't have an E, I think. But, something like where you can't have an S as the last letter because of just where the S's are pointing, and you can't have a D as the last letter because we can't have any Ds. Or N's. I'm thinking R. Fur. I mean, maybe it's not no F at all. That could also be the case.
Yeah.
Let's see. What were the other 2 spots that Fs can go? It's like there.
Yep. It's just the bottom right corner.
Oh, right. It is just those ones. Because everybody said 5, including the one where I put the T. So, Fin, Phil. Well, not Fin. Fur and Phil. And Fin?
Oh, also couldn't be there.
Well, I mean, there could be an L, but not there.
In neither one of those.
Oh, right. I overlooked this hint. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm currently trying to determine if it makes more sense for us to guess an F, or I guess an R would be the alternative. Which, honestly, I like the F there. I do like the F. I do like something ending in FER as a possibility. Maybe FET, but that seems less intuitive to me. Fog could also work with FOG, but I don't know if there's anything that you can prefix it with. Oh wait, no, it's not in. Oh, it's an E, so it would be fog.
Fog?
No, never mind, forget it.
Paw? Okay.
I was thinking of words with F vowel G with F vowel consonant, I think, and I kind of forgot that the vowel has to be an E. But no, like I mean, fag, fev, fair, fed, fey. I mean, fey is a thing. I think it can be spelled with E and Y, but with E and A, but I don't think it's fey something. Honestly, that seems unlikely. No, I do like FER at the end as a reasonable likelihood. It can't be offer because it has two Fs. I mean, what could it be then with fur at the end, though? Even if it is a good guess in a vacuum, like fur. Offer comes to mind, but it doesn't work because the other F. And then what comes before? What comes before the F, right? Because most consonants end up sounding a bit odd, so you're leaning towards vowel, and it's like something A for, something I for, something O for, something. Well, not U for. E for. A for. It doesn't have to be fur either, it could be fur. So it could be like affer, offer, iffer, sort of a thing. Ifer, tyfer, lifer, cipher. Well, that's spelled very differently. Knifer. Hey, that's close. Wait. No.
Safer?
Safer. Oh, like comparative, yes. Well, safer doesn't work because of the S, but...
Oh, true, yes.
I mean, it's still better than anything I came up with, but it's just also definitely wrong.
Problem is...
Refer?
Refer. That could work.
Do we have anything that obviously says no to this? I mean, we don't know anything about R's yet, I think. And we're putting them at the exact opposite ends of the grid, so if we get a lot of white R's, we kind of have a very sort of limited area where those could go as well.
Yep.
I mean, if the F's aren't here, we basically almost... Wait. Yeah, we basically don't know where it is.
Yeah.
The E looks at the very least reasonable. It looks reasonable at best, and... Well, the first E, the second E, of course, is kind of set in stone. And it gives us some more information at worst.
Yeah, let's go with that.
And unless I could come up with something better than R as a starting letter, I would have totally... One of them was refer. We got a bonus guess. So now elite we can definitely guess as well, or rather something that contains the T there. So we likely will get another bonus guess before we run out of guesses.
The E guess. We have another E in the column.
Oh.
And we actually know where it is. It's in the first spot.
Because of this hint right there. I just now saw that as well. So that is how we enter the one that we know. There's an E there.
That means we know where the A is.
Because
which is great. We suspected it was there.
Suspected that already, but yeah, now we know it, which is even better. If there's one thing that's better than suspecting, it's knowing. Do you have any other sort of positive information anywhere that we can still make use of?
I don't think so. We haven't tried that many letters yet.
So we do have a bit of negative information.
Could technically see if we can fit an S somewhere in there.
Right. Yes.
Because the only other spot would be the very center.
I mean, I guess there are two questions we can ask, right? What are words that we can fit in the first row? And then what are words that could theoretically be in the second column, which doesn't actually matter right now, but it is still an interesting question because we have 3 out of 5 letters and... Well, actually, ample would work. Okay, fair enough. Jesus. Okay, so first row. We want a word that has the second letter A and the last letter E. And I said, by the way, I don't know if you quite got there, but MP could work here. I guess it would be the British spelling, because I guess the American spelling of MP would probably be EL, but I'm sure that works.
I don't know. I only know the spelling.
I'm sure if we get something else right, we also will have an ample amount of tries to get there. So let's see.
Do you maybe want to put that in as like guesses? Ample?
I can. I didn't necessarily want to because I didn't have a high degree of certainty at all, but see, first, that's the only thing I came up with thus far. Also, we haven't tried M's or P's at all, so that's actually something we could technically do. So, I mean, if we want to add more constraints to what we can try for the first row, if we try one of those letters, obviously not in the second position, but we could see if they're black or white would make a lot of help as well. So you wanted an S.
We can at least see if we can reasonably fit one in there.
Haste.
Haste. Has a T in there.
Which we haven't had any T's yet. We suspect a T, but we have never actually tried one. So I actually like it.
And it would also intersect with...
And it does the S.
Yep.
Which... Is that one of the spots that we...
I do like that.
I think it is,
yes.
Right? It's one of the legal S spots.
Yep.
So, yeah. It took... I always find it very interesting when it takes like forever to come up with a word that works, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is a simple word. So we're using this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Is that what I got?
Yes, I like it very much. We'll get a ton of information where the S could be. Like I said, we get a ton of information where the S could be.
Is it poser? I feel like it almost has to be poser, right?
It almost has to be. Has to be.
So let's see. I mean, obviously we can get that guess right now. Like, as I said, like, it looked almost hopeless when we were down to 4 guesses, and we're still at 4 guesses, because we got 2 back-to-back correct guesses, and all of a sudden, it's almost filled out. So, if that is true, then there's an E right there. Because it can't be in any of the last 2 spots.
Yes.
I don't think we actually know for sure where it would have to be otherwise, because it could still be in one of the other 2. Also, in the column, it could also still be one there, but the column has to have one. So, I do like OME. I mean, my primary thing that I would love to do is actually get the second row correct right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other option would be to just type in ample and see if it's correct, but you know. Oh, right. We have T something ITE. What could that be? Trite.
Right. What is that?
I think it's something like if you have a cliche, you would say it's trite, right? It's like it's kind of already sort of over. It's like it's passé, right? Like it's a sort of
Okay.
That's how I would interpret that word just right from the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay, trite makes sense. It's one of the few things I could also come up with that would make sense just linguistically, right? Because you can't really just put like tmight, kite, right? Like the English language is a bit particular about like which consonants can follow one another. Twite might still technically work, but it seems weird. And then, of course, the vowels would work, but A isn't allowed, E isn't allowed. Double I seems wrong, also isn't allowed. U is generally not allowed. And toit is a bit more colloquial, because that is normally spelled very differently. So, you know, I figured trite might be the best answer.
You know, that kind of makes sense.
But then the question is, what the fuck is Omer?
Also, don't forget the road has to have an A in there.
Well, I guess it's Omera. Is Pazer?
And
no, wait,
it
Pazer
could anyway. It
wait,
could
A
only
has to be there.
been in two spots.
Can't be there.
Either in the second or the last position.
I guess is.
And I doubt that a word starts with double A. So yeah, let's see if that's a word.
I'm an idiot. It's not ample at all. That looks so much better.
That looks so much better.
Apple and opera. Wait, is it opera? Is opera spelled differently? I mean, opera like the browser.
At least there's a browser with that name.
Yeah. Okay, so that is cool. Then we have.
I think it's spelled that way.
Then we have what? Eater? I don't know. And we have se. I mean, I feel like we have enough letters to where I would love it if we could solve the entire grid right now to just be surer of our answers. But
Serif.
Sprig.
Spry.
Spry doesn't work. Mostly because I think it's spelled with a Y by default. But so you said we said R. Serif.
Yeah.
Like in Serif Sans, yeah, and then Sprig. I like because eager. Well, there we go. Because eager, right? Like I'm eager to solve this puzzle.
Oh yes.
Opera. And we had sprig, which is a word that I've heard before, but I wouldn't be able to tell the exact definition, but I think it has something to do with trees.
Oh god, so many bonus guesses.
I mean, yes, we have more guesses than we started with, right? Well, not more than we started with at all. We have just the exact amount, but and then we have trite or elite, which, I mean, I can't stop myself from actually trying. I could have also tried anything that had the T there. Wouldn't have even had to be one or two words. But we win. Paste, opera, sprig, elite, refer, poser, apple.
7 guesses remaining.
Serif.
And only because we didn't receive the last bonus guess.
Well, we now know that is as intended, so fair enough.
Yes. I still find it weird that it is a thing.
I mean, yeah, it's a weird thing where it's like, oh yeah, obviously there's no reason to give you a bonus guess, but also, why complicate the rule set to specifically have an exemption for when you don't get a bonus guess?
Yeah.
Especially because it is already useless, right? Like the same argument for why it wouldn't make sense to get a guess is the same argument for why it doesn't make sense to remove the guess either.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those where all of these are reasonable words.
I mean, I didn't know sprig or trite.
Okay, so actually, because of those, I'm going to quickly define trite. Not evoking interest because of overuse or repetition. That's pretty much exactly what I said, right? It's like a cliche, it's passé.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Worn out, common, used until so common as to have lost novelty and interest. Hackneyed, stale. Worn out, hackneyed, used as many times that is no longer of interest or effective. Often reference to word of phrase. So yeah. That one I got very, very correct. And then sprig, I didn't know quite as well myself. There it is. Sprig. A small shoot or twig of a plant. I told you it's a tree thing. An ornament in this shape, or a small brad without a head.
Yep. Or a young, immature person. Or the sparrow.
Okay, yeah, but I mean the small shoot or twig of a plant was definitely what I was thinking of when... Again, I wouldn't have been able to tell you quite exactly how it's defined, but I had a general idea of the tree association. Like, I would have probably gone for like a small twig or something, but I couldn't have told you that specifically. But yeah, no, I think those words were all... Oh yeah, did we actually look up opera? Opera, is that Opera browser?
I think that's the way.
Is a multi-platform web browser developed by its namesake company Opera. The browser is based on Chromium. Okay. Let's go to...
Yeah, just type in define opera. It is a thing.
Opera is a form of theater in which music is a fundamental component. Yeah, this is what I was thinking. It's opera. It's just that we don't usually say the E. We usually say opera, which meant that, as English speakers...
oh, okay.
I feel like you generally say...
I always just pronounce the
opera.
E.
And I feel like when I hear people talk about the browser, they do, but they will say like opera or opera or something. So like, that is why I was a bit dubious of whether or not it's actually what I was thinking it is. But yeah, no. I mean, paste is a very simple concept, right? It's kind of like jam, but like maybe not edible necessarily. Sometimes it is. Depends on what kind of paste. Or of course, to paste something as in to copy, but that of course is, I think, directly comes from paste, as in paste used as glue, I think that's where that comes from.
Probably,
to paste something in. Opera, of course, yes. We just double checked because, again, like, it was just a spelling that wasn't 100% sure about. Sprig, we checked. Elite is a very easy word. Refer, also, I think, kind of very common. Poser it feels very modern in comparison to some of the weird words that we get sometimes. I'm not even sure if it is that modern, but
it kind of does.
I mean, I guess someone who poses something like maybe a mannequin might also be a poser, but when I hear poser, I think of someone who's like flexing and doesn't actually have the stuff to back it up. Apple as the fruit. Serif, as in sans serif. That one actually took me a second. When you said it, I was like, wait, what? But yeah, no, serif as in sans serif, well, as in serif as well, not just, but I mean, if I don't say sans serif, then you obviously... Then I'm not elaborating. Like fonts. Like the little hooks that are at the end of letters. They're serifs.
Yeah.
Trite, which is overused, passé, cliché. Which I guess passé and cliché are both French words, but then again, I'm not sure if trite might not be a French word as well. I'm not guaranteeing it. It sounds a bit weird when I try to say it in a French way, but eager is, I already
it
eagerly...
probably has a slightly different spelling, maybe. If it is.
I mean, let's see. Trite etymology. That is a nice spell. origin and meaning of tried by Adam add to more online. That works. Interesting to tried terre. From Latin treatise, worn, off-trodden. So if it comes from Latin, there might be a French cognate, but it isn't directly taken from French.
Interesting. Okay.
As you translate dot. I don't know why I'm even doing that. I could have used DeepL. Anyways, right, and then go to French banal. Okay, fair enough. Banal. We use that in German as well.
Is that really the French pronunciation?
Banal. Banal. Okay, the last
okay, that sounded a bit different.
Banal. Yeah, I mean the emphasis is later. But then again, French doesn't have a vowel length distinction, and I don't think they have emphasis in the same way that other languages do. So I'm not even sure if French people would like be as off-put by it as you were. No, I mean they probably would. Yeah, banal. Fair enough. To be fair, like
because it just sounded like the German one.
The problem is, right?
So like,
I am a native German speaker, and so I don't think I've ever seen the word specifically used in French, right? I mean, obviously it makes sense that it would exist in French, and it was rated as like the highest common rating in Google, so it's not very rare by any stretch, but I don't think I'd come across it, at least not consciously. And so your brain automatically defaults to what you know, right? Add to that I'm in an English-speaking context, not in a French-speaking context, which means that there's no reason for my brain to be in the French one anyways, which means I always find it's a tougher time when I'm speaking one language. I'm trying to pronounce an individual word in another language is a lot harder than just speaking in that other language.
It's so tough.
So that is one of those things where, and then add to that again that there's already another pronunciation in my head, and it's like, obviously, I'm bound to get it wrong.
Like, whenever I have to pronounce, like, a Russian word, I have to mentally prepare for, like, a couple seconds to just get in the mode.
It doesn't help that Russian also has a lot of different sounds from languages like English and German, and B, still, those different sounds, at least some of them, are also similar, which means you're much more likely to slip into something else, right? Like, if you have, like, oh as instead of o or something, or like r instead of r or r, right? It's like, okay, the R's are technically very different, but you still associate them very heavily. Do you put a toilet paper roll on with the paper unrolling from the top or the bottom? It's the old...
I do not understand the question. I put it on the only correct way.
So do I. Also, by the way, we're doing closing questions. So toilet paper over under is the question. I think unrolling from the top would be over, unrolling from the bottom would be under.
I mean, yeah, I think I understand what they mean by unrolling from the top and from the bottom. But the distinction doesn't really make that much sense to me. It makes much more sense to me of it being front or back.
I mean, yeah, the question is right towards is the paper hanging down towards the wall or relatively freely toward the room?
Yeah.
And I would say the latter is the correct version.
Toward the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In large part because it also just makes it easier to grab it, right? Which is the reason why people say to do the other way around because, cats, I guess, but also like, why the fuck would you have cats? That was maybe a bit harsh, but... And the second question is, why would your cats be in your bathroom? Like, for fuck's sake. I mean, cats are kind of terrible pets because they don't really like people.
Yeah.
And also, I wouldn't want to have a litter box indoors. See, I like outdoors cats, right? Where you feed the cat and then like it has a
they come in like once a day
and like maybe they have the option to come in, right? I mean, we have the mill I mentioned before on the channel, right? We have cats there, but they live in the barn, and they barely come indoors at all. Partially because you can't just go up to them, pick them up, and throw them out again. So that makes it a bit difficult if they do get in, because they might just hide a corner somewhere, and there is good reason to not necessarily have them indoors at all times. A variety of reasons, actually. One of them being also the fact that both me and my mother are allergic.
1 second, let me close my window.
Yeah,
because all sorts of insects start flying in.
So that is a pro tip for everyone. You generally don't want to have your windows open and your lights on at the same time. That gets you moths, which are probably worse to have in your house than cats. Okay, practically not, because moths don't do anything, but also it's kind of annoying. So yeah, no, I don't have anything against cats per se, but I still think that they don't really make logical sense as pets. But yeah, no, the whole toilet paper thing, over. That's the right way to do it. It feels aesthetically more correct, and also I think it is effectively simpler to rip it off, especially because, I mean, maybe there's another easy way of doing it, but I guess no, there's a relatively easy way to rip it off from the backside, but it feels more intuitive from the front side, to me at least.
Yep.
Can you swim?
Yes.
I mean, yes, I can swim. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to be thrown in the ocean or anything. I'm not a terrible swimmer by any stretch, but I'm also I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a good swimmer either, right? I'm adequate, right? I'm not going to drown in a pool.
Yeah.
But I don't know what happens if there's waves. I mean, I guess the ocean has the advantage it's more buoyant because of its salinity. But yeah, I wouldn't want to necessarily be thrown in a situation where I either have to swim for over a kilometer or something just in one go, or in a situation where the water is maybe not as smooth, but I could go to a swimming pool and just swim a couple lanes or whatever.
I mean, a kilometer wouldn't even be that bad, I think.
I was trying to think of how many lanes it would be. I didn't want to say miles and miles, right? But because I didn't want to immediately go I wouldn't want to swim 100 miles because maybe there are a few people that can do that, but generally speaking, I would assume that's not a thing.
Yeah. But yeah, if there's any currents or just waves that are a bit bigger, I don't know how I'd handle that.
I mean, obviously, at some point, waves just become unswimmable in a way, right? But even regular currents, if they're not that extreme, I just don't know how I would be able to deal with those, right? Because I've never been to the ocean either. But so but what I'm saying is I'm a perfectly competent swimmer in a regular swimming pool environment. Though I also haven't swum in years. So that's the other thing. But I mean, it's they say it's like riding a bike.
Kind of is, yeah.
Are you taller than both of your parents?
I am actually unsure. I'm definitely taller than my mom, but I'm pretty much the same height as my dad.
Same here. I mean, I think I'm slightly taller than my dad, but maybe by a small margin. But I am generally pretty much the more or less the same height as my dad. It might literally, be close enough to where it varies from day to day, right? Because your height does vary a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly don't know. Have you ever dyed your hair?
I have not.
I haven't either. And I also don't have any intent to do it. I don't know, they never quite appeal to me as much. Also, it's just not great for your hair.
Even on the local festival thingy where people usually dye their hair, I actually also never have.
Okay.
Rosenmontag?
Oh, I guess, yeah. yeah, I have never dyed my hair, and I don't really tend to. A lot of hair dyeing is not great for your hair. I mean, most of like, especially the darker colors tend to be fine. Like if you have to bleach your hair first before you put color in, that's like actually bad for your hair. But I also like, I had like at least considered it at one point. Not necessarily as in like I wanted to change my hair color, but just like when there was like a thing that like a lot of my classmates, mostly the girls, were doing, where it's like a lot of them were dyeing their hair, and I'm like, why do you dye your hair? Like, is that something that like I would want to do? And it's like I came to the conclusion it doesn't really make any sense, right? It's just one of those things. I guess I get the aesthetic idea behind doing it, but I don't have a color that necessarily appeals to me for myself more than the natural hair color I already have, and B, it just seems like a pain in the ass to like have to re-dye it all the time because your roots end up growing out, and C, if you do permanently dye it, like as in repeatedly dye it, then there's also eventually just not that good for your hair. So there's just practical considerations that go to that as well. But I've also never had a color where it's like, oh, I would love it if my hair was that color. So it's kind of also that part was like, for me personally, it's why bother. I get why other people do it, and I have seen people who dye their hair where it does look really good on them, right? Or it does maybe look better than natural hair color. And then also like some of the more out there colors, I think, can still look good, right? Like these sort of unnatural colors, so they can look good, but I would say more so women.
It's a bit tough to do,
but that is maybe more subjective because I generally find women more attractive. And then B, even though it does look good on other people, that doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't want to do it for myself. Also, generally, anything that draws attention, I'm kind of against for myself. Where it's like I don't necessarily want to stand out, right? Like if I want to stand out, I still can.
I can relate to that so much,
but I wouldn't necessarily want to be forced to constantly stand out in a crowd.
Yeah. I relate to that so much.
Have you ever broken a bone?
I actually have. I've broken one of my fingers once. Wasn't too pleasant. Had to walk around in a cast of like... It was a pretty big cast, like up to my elbow. Basically.
Oh, right. Yeah, they always go very hardcore on that. It's like, oh, you broke a finger? Like, have fun not moving your entire arm for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like 3.5-ish weeks that I had to walk around with it. Worst thing was it was like right at the start of summer break.
I always thought that was going, because from what I hear, the worst thing is sweating under those, So I have never actually...
Also, like, most of the free time you have is like just not really usable because you can't even really play computer games.
I mean,
because you can't hold your mouse.
There are things that I do that would not be affected by it, like watching shows, where I was like, you could probably hold a remote, you can operate it with either hand, I would say reasonably well. It's not that... It doesn't require that much of a degree of dexterity. And also, even if you do it on a computer, like you can operate a mouse or a keyboard with one hand, not to the point where you can play games with it, but to the point where you can like search something up and then move the mouse to like click on it. It would be a bit awkward, but like, especially if you're doing something like a streaming service where it autoplays next episode and stuff, and you just have to like queue up the show and then just sit down for a couple hours. That would totally work. Or again, during school times, I would also, like when I was still in school, I would sometimes just actually watch like actual television, which like, dude, I don't know, 2/3 commercials. I don't know.
Oh God, actual television.
I said 2/3. I meant 1/3. That sounds like an exaggeration, but like 1/3 is pretty accurate actually. So most shows are like 40 to 45 minutes, and most time slots are an hour. So, okay, we're gonna do the next one, but I love how this is enclosed into questions. Does free will exist?
No.
I'm also going to go with no. But while it is technically close in a question that it has yes or no answer, this is obviously not an answer that you just answer with yes or no and then leave it. So let's go to this one week. No, I'm serious. We have talked about this before, and there is multiple points that I could make about this, but like.
Because Felix.
I did the. What? First of all, what the fuck was that, Sergej? And second of all, I accidentally pressed the button for turning your song on instead of the scene switch, which apparently still turns it on even if I'm not on that scene, which I didn't know, but it's good to know. But also, I'm sorry for spoiling whatever the fuck that was, but it sounded Bavarian and it looked Bavarian, and what the fuck's going on there? I have questions, Sergej. I have very serious questions.
Oh no. Connection issues. Okay. I'm back. Yeah. It is a song. It's called Einen Jodler hör ich gern.
Okay.
Or Einen Jodler hör ich gern. It's not actually ich.
Because of course.
And it is... Yes, because of course it is. And it's by Franzl Lang.
So it's not Bavarian, it might have very well been Austrian, but like, okay, so I've kind of gotten over the whole like German music thing, right? Like I used to for a while there be kind of against it a lot in general, where it's like, oh yeah, like if this is like a fully German language song, I'm probably not even gonna listen to it. I've gotten over that, right? But like, what the fuck is going on here? Like this is not even good.
It is great. It's one of the best German songs, honestly.
If we're talking about some of the best German songs, I mean, obviously, we could talk about some of the Falco songs, but his problem is that most of the songs are partially in German, partially in English, so I can't exactly be like, Genie or like Out of the Dark or something that those aren't exactly entirely in German. We could talk about someone like Herbert Grönemeyer or Pur. Actually, I don't like that many Pur songs, but Abenteuerland's pretty good. But like there are artists that we can talk about. Like there are songs that we can talk about. But like this.
I don't know what you have against this song. It's great.
I mean, first of all, when we're talking about like Southern Germany, Austria, that sort of stuff, I'm generally not that big of a fan. But I'll say it's generally like the yodeling and like I don't know, just the everything about this is kind of very questionable to me.
Like I can actually listen to this unironically in my playlist. I do genuinely like this, not just as a joke.
That's somehow worse. I mean, okay, so I'm a strong believer in not like trying to talk people out of enjoying things, right? Because enjoyment is a good thing.
Yeah.
And so if you enjoy it, it's good for you, but like I still find this very questionable. Anything else you want to say about that?
One thing is, I didn't really find a cover for the song.
Yeah.
I did find a cover from one of this guy's albums, so I just put it in here, but I don't think it's the correct one.
Okay, let's see. One thing that I do want to actually buy my Wikipedia. Let's go to de.wikipedia.org. I really do that. What is his name? It's Franz. What the?
Franzl.
Oh yeah, there's
an L.
Lang. Yeah, okay, I see it. So yes. I admittedly am not as used to reading the old German script.
Yeah, no, I.
So
basically cannot read it at all.
Oh, he does actually have an English article as well, which I didn't necessarily expect.
Yes, it's way shorter, but yeah.
He's from Munich, so he is.
It doesn't even list this song.
I mean, yeah, usually it would just list. Wait, but his filmography is all, or like mostly Austrian. grew up in Munich, blah, blah, blah. Something Munich. It was in a movie called Salzburger Geschichten, which means, well, stories from Salzburg. In something about Tyrol, which is either in Italy or, well, South Tyrol is in Italy or in Austria as well. That is a German show. Well, he's buried in Munich. It does seem like he worked in Munich mostly, but it does seem like a lot of his acting stuff was actually in Austria, which... but yeah, no, I mean, I got the part of the world correct. I mostly just wanted to look up if it was German or Austrian, but...
okay.
Huh. I still don't know what to do with that information. Well, let's go
I encourage you to actually listen to the full thing. It's just like 2 minutes, I think.
I'll do it for you, but...
Thanks.
So, from Germany to Sweden. My song of the week is Dark Wings, Dark Words by Hammerfall.
Nice song. Can totally see it in my playlist, but I, for some reason, just don't have it in there. I usually listen to like this kind of songs in other people's playlists.
Okay.
Like when sharing a ride or something.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean... I said to Sweden, obviously, they're singing in English, so it's... I mean, I feel like most Swedish bands do. At least the ones that you would know. If you're not Swedish. Or I guess I should say if you're not, like, Scandinavian. Because I'm sure that Swedish language content does make its way across, like, Norway and Denmark and possibly Iceland. Probably not so much Finland, because their language is, like, completely different. I don't know how many Finns actually speak Swedish. Or any of the other North Germanic languages, but that's besides the point.
I thought they were, like, intelligible.
Dude, Finnish is a Finno-Ugric language, and all the other ones are North Germanic. So, no.
Never mind, then.
Swedish, Norwegian, Icelandic, and Danish are, like, more or less intelligible, mutually. Though, Danish has a big problem with asymmetric intelligibility, which is to say that the Danes can't talk clear for their lives. So Danes are kind of notorious for speaking the Danish language in general is kind of notorious for just not being very intelligible. And so Swedes and Norwegians have a hard time understanding Danish people if they're speaking Danish, but Danes will have a comparatively easier time understanding Norwegian or Swedish. I don't know that much about Icelandic.
Okay.
It's in the same language group, so presumably it has a reasonable degree of intelligibility. But it's an island, so they don't have as much contact with the other people. It's just further away.
Yeah. I mean, I can almost make out Swedish. Like, almost.
It's one
Makes
of those...
me feel like I'm, like, hyper dyslexic.
It's one of those things where it's like, you hear Swedish, or you see Swedish written, and it's like, it feels like you should be able to understand at least some of it, and, like, most of the time you don't. But it feels like you should. It's like, you're almost there. It's like, no.
Yeah.
I've tried that before as well when we had Swedish, Norwegian, Faroese, that sort of stuff on the language guessing game, which we've played before. And they did have Faroese as well, which is spoken in the Faroe Islands, which I believe belongs to Sweden. I mean, it's one of those countries it belongs to. I might have gotten the wrong one though.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, I always try to and yet I'm not going to get a word, but nothing substantive the way I could understand it.
I mean, I don't really know about spoken Swedish, but written Swedish, at least in job offers, because I have been looking into that lately. I can actually understand most of it.
I mean, to be fair, if you're looking
Maybe
at IT job
it's because
offers, you could
it's-
probably understand it just about everywhere,
Yeah.
because most of the terms that they use for like the actual job titles and stuff are just English, I would assume.
I mean, yes, but like parts apart from that are actually in Swedish.
Yeah. I assume written would be easier than spoken. I feel like I've had more experience with spoken to some degree, but I've also generally didn't have that much experience with North Germanic languages in general. I do understand West Germanic languages better. I can tell that much. I can understand like, Dutch or Luxembourg. I mean, Luxembourg is just trivial, but I can understand like Dutch a lot better than I can Swedish. That much I can tell you for sure. Both written and spoken.
Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah.
I also I find Luxembourgish to be the easiest West Germanic language to understand besides German and English, because it's basically just German.
Nice.
I will say, okay, we shouldn't like drag on too much because this is not at all the topic or anything, but I feel like I can understand Luxembourgish better than Swiss German. And I have had very limited exposure to both of them, so some of my sample size isn't very big. So there's always a thing where like, oh, maybe the Luxembourgish speakers were just actually speaking more slowly or more clearly or something. But I'm fairly certain that holds true because Luxembourgish is a standardized version of a West Franconian dialect, and the local dialect where we live should also belong to the Franconian group. So presumably, the specific dialect that has formed into a language there is very closely related to what we are speaking, or what people around us are speaking in our daily lives. Of course, accents are getting reduced from generation to generation, but so there is that element to it, and maybe if I lived somewhere like much further south, maybe I would have a better time with Swiss German, because that has also diverged a bit from regular German, and so even compared to something like Austrian German, which is, I would consider Austrian German just be a dialect of German. I consider Swiss German a separate language.
Okay.
Because,
I mean, I'd have to listen to all of them to.
I mean, yeah, but I
give
find,
my opinion on it.
especially because Austrians are still very similar in a lot of ways to Bavarians. So, I mean, it depends on where in Austria, of course. If you go further away from Bavaria, the accents also become more different. But, like, you could just watch Austrian TV. Like, that's the thing you could do, and it's like not a big
Probably,
deal.
yeah.
I'm not sure how good I would do with Swiss German television. I remember, and this is the last anecdote about languages, because we gotta end this podcast. But, I know, I'm both deciding that we should end the podcast, and I'm also both the one deciding to tell stories, so like, I'm the only person I'm in conflict with right now, but, I was watching a French documentary, and that was like, already a while ago when my French wasn't as good as it is now, and I wouldn't by any stretch say that I'm like perfectly fluent or anything. And there was a Swiss guy who was giving an interview in Swiss German, and they had French subtitles, and I was reading the subtitles because I had an easier time with the French subtitles than with the Swiss German talking.
Nice. Okay.
Make of that what you will.
That is a funny anecdote. Yeah.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you might consider leaving it a like. If you have something to say to us, you can do it so in the comments. You could do it in German, you could do it in English, you could do it in French. Heck, if you do it in Russian, I'll ask Sergej what it means. And if you want to talk to us more, you can also join our Discord server, though you should maybe keep that to English because that's what people there generally speak. And subscribe to the channel to get more of this content. Sergej!
That's it.
That's it.